Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing a discussion video. Basically, a couple of you guys commented on my first video that I put up for Vlogmas saying you wanted me to make a video talking about the whole discussion that's been happening around like reading fatigue, booktube fatigue, reading being a competition. I'm going to link a bunch of videos down in the description box because there have been a lot of really great discussions going on around this. I believe it basically started with Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings making a video talking about falling out of love with reading. I'll link that as well as like her follow-up video that she made on that. Ariel Bissett made a video talking about reading being a competition. A couple of other people, including Jennifer from, oh my gosh, I cannot remember her channel name right now. Her video will be down below, as well as like a number of different people have talked about this in various formats. There's like a bunch of different angles being discussed here and a bunch of different topics being discussed here, and part of me wanted to make like entire videos just based on each topic, and part of me wanted to like not participate in the discussion just because there are so many great things being said by so many other people that I didn't know if I really had something to add to the conversation. But a couple of you guys asked, so I figured I would just talk about it from my own just like personal point of view. That's kind of what some of you guys were asking for, like what's my experience with reading fatigue, booktube fatigue, and reading feeling like a competition. And first I want to say like all of those things are very real. Like these are very much things that happen when you become a person who reads as part of a community, whether it be booktube or bookstagram or as a book blogger, anything along those lines, or even just like being a part of Goodreads in general and seeing like how other people are reading. And I have talked about this at some capacity before. I made a video a couple of years ago called Stop Stressing Out About Reading, which I feel like is still completely relevant. And if you watch that video, you'll see that we were having sort of the same conversations a couple of years ago. You'll also get to see my old intro and my old video style, what I look like without glasses, as well as what I look like before I learned color correction. I'm of the opinion that if you do anything a lot, you're going to get fatigued. I think that's just how humans work. If you read a lot, you're going to get fatigued. Even if you like watch a lot of television, you're going to get fatigued, even though it's basically just you sitting there. Even if you sleep a lot, like that isn't healthy for you. You're supposed to do like a certain amount of each of those activities, and you're supposed to mix things up. You're not even supposed to eat like the same food over and over again. Like you need variety in your life. And so I feel like fatigue is very much a thing that happens when you do something a lot. On booktube, all of us read a lot and all of us consume a lot of booktube, and a lot of us spend a lot of time in the book world, and fatigue is real, and sometimes we need breaks, and it's completely normal and healthy to take those breaks and to step back from these activities that we enjoy doing and to do something else for a while. Because I've said this before and I will continue saying it, we are all more than just readers. We're all more than just book people. It may be a significant part of who we are, and it may take up a significant portion of our time, but it isn't the only thing that we are. A lot of us have friends and family members that we care about. A lot of us enjoy watching movies and television and going to concerts and listening to music and painting and drawing and taking pictures and going on hikes and playing sports. Like we're all multifaceted people. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with spending time doing those other activities instead of reading. I think for me personally, the reason why I keep coming back to reading is because it is sort of like just a facet of my time. Like I don't spend all day every day reading. Even on days that I have like a completely free day, I don't spend the entire day reading. I might spend a lot of the day reading, but there are other things I really enjoy doing, and I think that's what keeps reading fresh for me. And another thing that helps me from not getting fatigued is just like I mix things up a lot with my reading, as you guys are aware. I like a lot of different genres, and personally it helps me not get bored with reading. I can tell when I've been reading a lot of any single genre that I start to get like really frustrated with it, or I start to get really bored with it, or I just don't enjoy it in general. So I mix things up by picking up a fiction book and then a nonfiction book and then a mystery book, and then sometimes I'll throw in a fantasy or a kid's book or a graphic novel or something along those lines that make it continue to be this like fresh new experience. And I feel part of this fatigue, whether it be reading fatigue or booktube fatigue, also comes from this sort of expectations that we hold ourselves to. There's a lot of people who talk about how bad they feel when they don't read books off their TBRs, or they post about a book on Goodreads and they want to give up on it, but they don't want to give up on it because they've already said that they're reading it. Like, do people actually get angry when people stop reading books? I don't mean that as like a cruel comment, although there was like a little bit of sarcasm in my voice there. But honestly, like, I've never watched anyone and been like, oh, how dare they put down that book. I was 100% wanting their opinion on it, which, if you think about it, them giving up on the book is kind of them giving an opinion on it, but it also might have just been not the right time for them. There's never been a point, like during my period on BookTube and reading sort of in this public manner, where I've DNF'd a book and anyone's been like really upset. If they express any sort of like sadness, it's just over the fact that I didn't enjoy the book itself, because either they wanted me to enjoy the book or they wanted it to be a good experience, so that way they would know it would be a good experience for them as well. But there's never been a point in time where someone's been like actively disappointed in me. I feel like that's all pressure we put on ourselves. We feel like we're disappointing people, but believe it or not, most of the time people are just excited that we're making videos and talking about books. So yeah, I feel like a lot of this pressure and just stress is self-imposed, and it takes a lot to break your own personal mindset and to realize like what people actually expect of you is really not as high of a bar as you might personally expect from yourself, which is a thing that I struggle with constantly. Believe me when I say that. So how do I deal with all of this? I basically just compare myself to me. So I made a book riot video relatively recently talking about how I set up my reading goals, and one of the things I've talked about there, as well as I believe I've talked about in goals videos on here as well, is like I set up the 50 book challenge to only ever be 50 books, because I know that for me personally 50 books is a good marker. Like this year I'm on track to read probably 100. I don't know if I'm actually going to hit 100. I've already read more than 90. But the thing is like after I reached 50 books, I never bothered to raise my goal, because I know that for me, 50 books is a very like solid marker, and like as long as I surpass that, I'm happy. And even if I don't surpass that, I feel like I'm pretty happy, because who I am now, I'm already reading so much more than I used to pre-BookTube, and in a very good way. I also make goals and expectations based on like what I personally know are like relatively achievable for me. So like for example, when I'm doing like readathons or any sort of like TBR type situations, like even Nonfiction November, I tried my best to read a book from every category, but I also was aware that it probably wasn't going to work out that way. So I was perfectly content with mashing up categories. My reading goals aren't really based on what everyone else's reading goals are. It's very much like me assessing myself and being like, okay, this is what I accomplished last year. What are some of the things I'm interested in accomplishing next year? And what is a reasonable sort of idea for me? Like, obviously, I want to push myself sometimes, and obviously, I don't want to become overly complacent with my reading, but I feel like I've already pushed myself above and beyond what I thought was possible. Maybe I just have really low expectations for myself, so I'm always exceeding them, but I think that there is something to be said about like doing self-assessment and having your assessment being based on like you and not what other people are doing. I think another part of this whole discussion is this keeping up with the Joneses sort of mentality that can happen in every single part of your life. It doesn't matter if you're in school, if you're working, if you're an adult. There's always going to be some aspect of your life that you could theoretically compare to other people, and you could measure yourself up against how other people are doing. If you're in school, it's like grades are very clearly a easy way to compare yourself to other people. Depending on what school you went to, you might have even had like a ranking system. It could be, after school, how much money you make, what your position is at your job, if you're married, if you have kids, etc., etc. Like there are all these different ways that you can measure yourself up against other people. And I think in BookTube, it's very much a thing, or just like publicly reading in general, it very much is a thing. Am I reading enough books? Am I reading the right books? Am I getting enough views on my videos because I am or am not reading the right books or making the right type of content? And I think that it doesn't matter where you are in life. The sooner you can rid yourself of that sort of mentality, the better off you are. I'm not really sure I have like great advice in terms of overcoming that outside of just what I said previously about like comparing yourself to yourself and seeing like personal growth and personal progress and letting that sort of be a good indicator for like how you're doing in life. But I think you also need to be aware of like all of the other aspects of your life. Ariel talks about how we often don't take life events into account when we're talking about our reading life. So like for her, she's in grad school right now, or she's getting her master's. That's grad school, right? And so obviously she's not going to be able to read as much as she used to. And that's fine. Like, I started a new job and that had an impact on other parts of my life, or if you're starting school, or if you're off from school, or if you're spend a lot of time traveling, and it's fine if it impacts your reading life. And I think that being like, hey, I just tried my best and this is where it got me, is totally fine. And again, this is all hobbies. Like, reading is a hobby, reading is a thing all of us do for fun, I hope. Outside of like a handful of people who might work in the book world or work as like a reviewer or something like that, all of us are doing this for fun. And so if it's not fun for you, change it up, do something different. Take a break, do whatever you need to do to like make it fun again. For me, that means reading the books I want to read when I want to read them, giving up on books when I don't want to read them anymore, not necessarily always reading the books that everyone else is reading. It means that I'm not reading necessarily every single day, and it means that sometimes it takes me 2 months to finish a book. I'm still reading that Washington biography, by the way. It's still going, and that's fine. I'm reading it at the pace that I'm comfortable with reading it at, and sometimes I put it down and read something else, and that's fine too. Like, you have to do what's best for you. And I think that like being on BookTube is a good thing because like it exposes you to the way different people read. Like, some people are really, really great at making TBRs and then reading the books off of that TBR. Like, it really helps them structure their reading and to make plans and things like that. I'm not that type of person. And until I tried it, I wouldn't have known that. And I think it's okay to not be that kind of reader. Like, figure out the type of reader you are and read that way, and figure out the type of booktuber you are and booktube that way. And maybe that means you make videos that aren't about booktube, and that's fine too. Do what makes you happy. That's what it all comes down to. This is, again, a hobby for all of us, or most of us, I should say. Do what makes you happy. Do what feels best for you. Yeah, that's all it comes down to. So yeah, hopefully this video was helpful and not too rambly and made some sense. Definitely leave a comment down below letting me know what you guys think and if you felt this before. Again, reading stress, reading fatigue, booktube stress, booktube fatigue, reading as a competition, like, it's all very, very real. And I'm not like dismissing anyone's feelings or comments about it. I feel like it's a part of the growing process as like a human being, is realizing that you experience these things and then learning how you overcome them. Like, when I watched all of these different videos, I'm like, yeah, I've felt all those things before for sure. And then I figured out how to not. So if you have any questions, definitely leave it down below. I'm happy to sort of talk about my own reading experiences and reading life and the way that I do things. Like, one of the things, I didn't even talk about this, very often I don't talk about what I'm currently reading. Maybe like once a month I'll post a Friday Reads video, but I very rarely update like my Goodreads status. Like, I don't put page or percentage numbers anymore. The most I'll do is like after a certain point in the book, when I know like I'm pretty sure I'm gonna finish it, I add it to Goodreads. Like, I don't put a book on Goodreads until like a day or two after I've started it, because at that point I know whether or not I'm going to be continuing on with it. That removes a lot of the pressure, just because a lot of times I don't know what I'm in the mood for to read, and so I like to skip around a little bit. Is why like in my November wrap up that I posted, I mentioned it briefly when I was talking about Artemis. Like, the only reason why I talked about that, putting that book down, is because I had publicly talked about it already. Otherwise, I probably would have just put it down and moved on to something else, and then if I had gotten back to it, then if I finished it, I would have talked about it. But yeah, I feel like a lot of what we do as readers, we feel an obligation to our audiences now that we have sort of audiences. All of that should be in air quotes, I feel like. But like, I think figuring out what part of your reading life you want to share with people and what's best if you keep to yourself is totally fine. Like, I share with you guys every book that I finish, but I don't necessarily share with you guys every book that I start. So that's a thing to think about. Maybe that could be an entire video into itself. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.